What's up, everybody? Mark with Coffee&Toys here, and today we are going to review issue number 1 of Duke from Skybound Comics, and let's talk about it right now. Okay, so today on comic book stands across America and beyond, Duke issue 1 from Skybound Entertainment, Skybound Comics, dropped. And I'm going to be frank with you, I was not really looking forward to picking this up. I like Duke, but he's never been super high on my G.I. Joe characters that I've really cared much for. But I told myself, hey, I'm going to pick up this issue. I'm going to see what it's all about. It might be really cool. And so I went to my comic book shop. Of course, they had it in. I actually managed to get all 3. I think there's only 3 different variant cover editions. So real quick, again, this is the main edition cover right here. You can see Duke in the foreground. We got Sky Striker in the background, an explosion behind Duke. And one thing I want to point out real quick up here is the EU, which is going to be the Energon universe, which is what Skybound is doing. That is going to tie Transformers and G.I. Joe together, and that's going to come into play during this review. So again, if you haven't checked out my channel before, I mostly do toy reviews, but I have been getting into the G.I. Joe comics because a lot of you are really excited about the G.I. Joe comics. And so I figured, what the heck, I'm going to get into them as well. And of course, we have Duke number 1 that we're going to go through today. But back on point, here is the variant cover showcasing Duke. Again, he's marching into action. He is a man of action. And I do like this cover a lot. And then here is the 1 in 10 edition of Duke. And this is very, very reminiscent, I think, of the San Diego Comic-Con Chuckles insert. I wonder if it was done by the same artist because it looks very familiar, looks very much like that Chuckles artwork on the G.I. Joe classified packaging. But yeah, so this is the 1 in 10 edition. And then one other thing before we go into discussing the actual issue, I did notice that on the shelves today, there was a second printing of G.I. Joe 301, which is the continuation of A Real American Hero with Skybound. So I did pick this up, and I like this one because we are showcasing the women of G.I. Joe. Of course, we've got CoverGirl, Scarlet, and Don Morano in the corner. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to pick that up because it's nice to see. I mean, we even have it right here, second printing. So that's very good to hear for the G.I. Joe comics that issue 301 of A Real American Hero sold so well that they actually ran a second printing of it. So congratulations, G.I. Joe community, for coming through on that. This is very, very good news. Congratulations to Larry Hama and the rest of the G.I. Joe writing team. Chris Moneyham, and I'm actually reading their names off the back. Chris Moneyham and Segala for all of their work they're doing to continue the A Real American Hero story. But like I said, we are talking about Duke issue number 1 today, and let's just, as I set these back over here, let's just dive into it. So, the story starts off, and you've probably seen, I'll throw a couple images up so you can see it, but, you know, Skybound already showed us the first few teaser images of this comic, and it starts out with General Hawk talking to Duke and saying, Duke, you are the best in class, you are a product of America, you are the best of the best. What the hell happened? And Duke's sitting there, and he's just, you know, disheveled, hasn't shaved, shirt not buttoned up properly, not a good-looking uniform. He's just kind of slumped over a chair. And we go into finding out why Duke is like this. And the story boils down to this. They were on a mission. He was flying a Sky Striker with another G.I. Joe operative. And they're fighting, and suddenly this airplane turns into a ginormous robot. Is this sounding familiar? And Duke saying, I couldn't believe this happened. And, you know, my partner was killed. And I don't know, I'm out of sorts about this. And that's why he's in such a state of disarray. And General Hawk's like, well, we've taken care of your partner, or not your partner, but the co-pilot, we've taken care of his family. And Duke presses General Hawk and says, what was on the black box of the Sky Striker? General Hawk responds, that's classified, and pisses Duke off. He throws some files across at Hawk. And Hawk says, go take some time to yourself. When you're ready, come back, but we do need you. And Duke's basically like, to hell with it, I'm done with this, and he's gone. We fast forward 6 months later. Duke now has long blonde hair, a complete blonde beard, and we see him trying to navigate his way to a certain meeting area. And he walks into this place, and there's all these conspiracy people talking about all this crazy stuff. Like, oh yeah, I saw a truck that was on the road, and all of a sudden a semi, and it turned into a robot. And then you hear other people being like, they're controlled by little green men. And Duke's just kind of shaking his head like, what the hell am I doing here? What is this all about? And he finally gets the attention, or a woman comes up to him and says, I'm glad you made it here. And he's like, oh my gosh, Dr. Burkhart. And yes, it is the Dr. Burkhart from the very first issue of G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero. And she takes him into a private room and says, I'm sorry you had to deal with all these crazies, but this is kind of where I work out of. And here's what I've discovered. All my research, I lost most of it, but I have found that when the universe was created, there was some energy that just went out into the cosmos, and this energy could power anything and everything. And she has a schematic on the board. And I believe, and I could be wrong, but I believe the schematic is actually the broadcast. No, it's not the broadcast energy transmitter. I believe it's actually the weather dominator. It's the one with the diamond on it. Remember, we got the toy, the Build-A-Vehicle, whatever you want to call it, from the 25th era with all those DVD packs or comic packs. I can't remember what they were. Excuse me. But it's up on the back of her like chalkboard or bulletin board, and it's funny because it looks like they took the exact stuff from the schematics from when that came out and just put it in the comic. It's really cool. So definitely, if nothing else, it's worth buying the issue just to see that, because it's kind of a fun little Easter egg. And she's telling Duke about this stuff, and she goes on and says, there's one company that seems to have access to this energy, or this whatever it is. And then the next panel cuts and it shows Mars Industries. And right before that, Duke says to her, she needs him to sneak into it to find out more information about it. And he laughs it off. He's like, I have snuck into harder places than a corporate building. And so he sneaks in and he's checking it out. And he's like, oh my gosh, this has to be related. He's seeing all this technology, and he's like, this has got to be related to the crazy robot I saw. And then all of a sudden he's like looking down at, like, it looks like his tanks. I'm not 100% sure if that's what they're supposed to be. But then you see a hand coming up behind him, and it's Mercer. And Mercer grabs him and they start tussling. And finally, Mercer gets the upper hand of him. A whole bunch of Cobra troopers, Mars troopers come in. And he brings him out, and Mercer is being talked to by somebody on the other end. And Mercer's like, let's just kill him now and get it over with. And the voice on the other end says, if I had killed every person who poked their nose into my business, my ancestors would have been out of business years ago, decades, centuries ago. And it cuts to a picture of Destro sitting on a throne speaking to Mercer. And that's really all we see of Destro. And Destro basically says, let him go. There are other ways to make sure he doesn't talk. So they let they let Duke go. And he's like, I've got to report this. I've got to get back to Dr. Burkhart. He gets back to Dr. Burkhart, and she is gravely injured. She is injured, and she is going to die. And she says, you need to get this information out now. It's too late for me. But we have to make sure people know about this. And I apologize. I am going to pull the comic out because I want you guys to know exactly what she says. And again, not a substitute for buying the issue. Please, this issue is solid. Let's see. She doesn't really tell him. She says we need to get this. It needs to not fall in the wrong hands. So she doesn't tell him where he needs to go. I'm getting ahead of myself in my brain, but we'll get to the good stuff here. Not that it hasn't already been good. But, of course, Dr. Burkhart dies, and then these assault officers come in that say police. Now, they're pretty heavy-duty police if they are, and they just start unloading on Duke. And which is interesting because we just heard earlier that he wasn't going to be killed. He jumps out a window, and one of them remarks nobody could have survived that. Well, Duke survives, and he is shot up. He's bleeding everywhere, and he's walking down an alley, and he's just trying to get his wits about him and plan his next move. Well, then we cut to General Hawk. He's in his office. It's dark, and he says he's talking to. Let me see. Let me make sure I get this right for you because it's very cool. He is not in his office. He is walking towards an Apache helicopter. Could be a Tomahawk, not really sure. It doesn't look like the Tomahawk. It just looks like an Apache. But he's talking on the phone, and he talks to Courtney Krieger. Of course, that is CoverGirl. And he says, civilian lives have been taken, and Duke is on the run. We have to tie this up. And CoverGirl says, Duke is one of the best, Colonel Hawk, and finding him will be impossible. To which General Hawk responds, if we can get the best to hunt him down, if we want to track down an American hero, we have to get ourselves some American heroes. And we cut to a picture of Stalker and Rock and Roll. So it looks like now the two G.I. Joes that are going to go find Duke and bring him back is going to be none other than Stalker and Rock and Roll, which is so cool. This issue is so fantastic and blew my mind. This is a reimagining of G.I. Joe, first and foremost. I probably should have led with that, and I apologize. They are telling a new story. And I didn't bring this up at the beginning, and it's worth it, and I apologize to the writer and artist. This is written by Joshua Williamson, and Tom Riley is the artist, and Jordi Belair is the colorist, and Russ Wooten is the letterer. Russell. I'm assuming he goes by Russ. But I apologize for not bringing that up in the beginning. But it's a fantastic issue, and it's a new imagining of G.I. Joe. We are learning that G.I. Joe is, of course, the special military organization within the U.S. government that does these special missions, whatnot. And we are learning that Duke is the number one guy, and things went sideways after this encounter with Starscream. Now, I'm not 100% sure it's Starscream. I'm pretty sure it's Starscream, but they don't flat out say it's Starscream. And in the issue, I'm 99% sure it's Starscream. He's mostly shadowed out, but there is the typical reds and blues and grays on him. I can't think of any other Decepticon that would be other than Starscream. But it's crazy because we're seeing it as G.I. Joe doesn't know who the hell the Transformers are. It's absolutely an amazing issue. To approach it as someone like Duke in the issue is basically like, I thought I was losing my mind. He's like, I did not expect to be flying and see an airplane turn into a robot and just attack me. That's not something a soldier sees. I mean, it's based in realism with unworldly things happening. So it's very cool. The artwork in this is fantastic. I love it. I love the way it looks. They do a really good job of changing Duke's appearance over that 6-month time frame from being the Duke we all know when we think of Duke in our head to being just this guy that doesn't look like Duke at all. I mean, he's just kind of like a grimy guy wearing a bomber jacket at this point. It's absolutely crazy. Bringing in Dr. Burkhart, absolutely fantastic, and tying it all back together. Having the pictures of the Weather Dominator is absolutely nuts. I'm pretty sure it's not the BET, because the BET was that one with the big flat surface that was like in like 3 angles like this. This is the one with the little diamond on the end as I'm looking over the issue. And furthermore, we're bringing Mars into it already. We know nothing of Cobra at this point. It's just, I mean, Mercer works for Destro, which is really cool, and he looks just like Mercer. I mean, just like he stepped out of the cartoon or off the action figure pegs, man. It's really neat. And just flipping through here a little bit more, I am going to read something verbatim because I think it's important. I did do it issue 301. This is Joshua Williamson basically writing, hey, here's what's issue number 1 about and what it means to me. So maybe I won't read it verbatim. I'll just kind of hit the highlights of it. But I think it's really cool because it resonates with fans, and it's just. He starts out saying it all started with VHS tapes and my dad. He talks about how his dad would record Saturday morning cartoons every Saturday, and they would sit down and watch them, and that he is a kid from a military family as well, so G.I. Joe really resonated with him. He's always had the toys. He goes, me and my friends used to play. We would buy the toys, and we'd make sure that if we asked for one toy, my friend wouldn't ask for it, so we never had duplicates. And he goes, I always was the Cobra side, which is how I was when I was a kid. I was always the Cobra. It was just so much more fun to be the bad guys. And he goes on to talk about the Energon universe and how they're writing this story new. They're going to spin it. Characters aren't going to be, they're going to be like you remember them, but they're not going to be exactly like you remember them. They're going to be different. This is a new story for a new audience, and the old audience, like me and probably a lot of you. But it goes on to say, as my hope is that you see everything we're doing with Duke and the G.I. Joe world comes from a place of respect that has come from before. Then you'll join us on this wild roller coaster ride that is familiar yet still new and exciting. There are times we will shock and surprise you, but it's all within the spirit, what made us fall in love with this world to begin with. And he basically says, and as I write this, I'm actually in my room. My son is playing with some of the G.I. Joes, and of course he's playing with the Cobras. And he goes, like father, like son. I thought that was really endearing to hear. He said, we're going to watch some G.I. Joes later. They're not going to be on VHS, but you get the point. And I thought that was a good little way to end it. And of course, at the end of this issue, we do get a brief preview of Cobra Commander #1, which I am super excited because these two stories are going to go together, if my understanding is correct. And just to give you the quick little preview, we see Cobra Commander enter a bar, and he's dressed like Old Snake. And how awesome is that? And I'm going to leave it at that because we got Cobra Commander coming next month. And of course, I'm going to do a full review on that. But I love that he comes in wearing the Old Snake getup. Just straight up walks into a bar looking like Old Snake from Transformers. Which, again, another great tie-in for G.I. Joe and Transformers that he's wearing that particular outfit. And yeah, we'll definitely talk more about Cobra Commander issue 1 in January. But fantastic issue. I hope if you're able, please pick this up. Support this. I know I do reviews and I'm telling you all about what happened, but if you like comics, jump on board now. This story's good. And again, I'm not a huge Duke fan, and I am super excited to see where this goes. This is a whole new G.I. Joe universe. And I have not been this excited since I read the Chuck Dixon G.I. Joe Cobra back from IDW. That I have not been this excited for G.I. Joe comics since then. And man, this is good stuff. So, Duke, issue #1, part of the Energon universe. Make sure you go pick it up. It hit newsstands. It hit comic book retailers today, December 27th. Geez, I can't even get the date right. Definitely worth picking up. I'm going to give it a big thumbs up. Speaking of thumbs up, make sure you like this video if you appreciate what I'm doing here. I try to do best I can with what I got. You know how it is. Make sure you like and subscribe as well. Drop a comment because I definitely read those and respond to them. And thank you so much. Otherwise, I'm Mark. You've been watching Coffee with Toys, and I'll see you later.